Good morning. Good morning, Abel, Carlos, Daniel. Good morning again, Evelyn Reyes. Good morning, Evelyn Rodriguez. Good morning, Keith. Keith, first one signed on. Good morning, Nadalyn and Raul. Chapter 4, Gatsby. I'll do a quick repeat of 3. So we go to Gatsby's party. It's an all-night party, ends about 4 a.m. Gatsby doesn't drink at his own party. Here's the question. Why? And note one thing. 1,000 people show up to his party. Remember, 200 juiced oranges, 14 golden baked turkeys, a full pit orchestra. But very few people are actually invited. He only invited a handful of people, but the party was so the notoriety that the word got around all the way up the New England coast. They come as far as Rhode Island. I guess my question to the scholars of Gatsby is why does he throw parties where thousands of people attend, none of them who actually know him? What does that serve? What does he want? What is he looking for? So here's my first hint, and then I'll read. Gatsby's looking for somebody or something. He's looking for something. He's hoping that of all these uninvited guests, someday someone will walk into his life. But who is that person and why? All will be revealed soon. Just here's the thesis. Keep in your mind that a man spends thousands and thousands of dollars a night throwing parties for people who don't even know him, for people who rumor him to be a German spy, for people that are unappreciative and crash cars in his driveway and pass out in his library and get drunk and cost him money and after money, but he still lets these people run wild because he's looking for blank. You know what I'm saying. You've all been to events, whether it's a pep rally in the gym or heck, I don't know, anything. You all know, you looking around, you're wondering who's there, and some people that you really, really want to be there, you're waiting for them to show up. Why? Here's how I want you to remember this. When we're in a large event where a lot of our friends are invited and the word gets out, and when you take a look through the crowd, who are you looking for? Who do you hope shows up to the party? Who's that person? And then you will know everything there is to know about Great Gatsby. All right, but all will be revealed in time. Chapter 4. As always, just bear with me as I read. I don't know, I'm frozen. Bear with me as I read, and I'll get you out of here in a reasonable time. We're almost at the halfway mark, almost. All right, what chapter was that? Okay. Chapter 3, we read that, and we're going to be coming up on chapter 4. We're getting, okay, woo, all right. Chapter 4. On Sunday morning, while church bells rang in the villages along shore of the world, and its mistress returned to Gatsby's house and twinkled hilariously on his lawn. He's a bootlegger. That's a man who makes illegal alcohol. Al Capone was a bootlegger during Prohibition, said the young ladies, moving somewhere between his cocktails and his flowers. One time he killed a man who had found out that he was nephew to von Hindenburg and second cousin to the devil. Reach me a rose, honey, and pour me a last drop into that crystal glass. Once I wrote down on the empty spaces of a timetable the names of those who came to Gatsby's house that summer. It is an old timetable now, disintegrating as it folds, and headed, this schedule in effect July 5th, 1922. F. Scott Fitzgerald published The Great Gatsby 1926, but the story takes place 1922. But I can still read the great names, and they will give you a better impression than my generalities of those who accepted Gatsby's hospitality and paid him the subtle tribute of knowing nothing whatever about him. This is really cool. From East Egg, then, came the Chester Bakers and the Leaches, and a man named Bunsen, whom I knew at Yale, and Dr. Webster Savett, who was drowned last summer up in Maine, and the Hornbeams, and Willie Voltaires, and a whole clan named Blackbuck, who also always gathered in a corner and flipped up their noses like goats at whoever came near, and the Ismays, and the Christies, or rather Hubert Auerbach, and Mr. Christie's wife, and Edgar Beaver, who's here, they say, turned cotton white one winter afternoon, no good reason at all. Clarence Endive was from East Egg, as I remember. He came only once in white knickerbockers and had a fight with a bum named Eddie in the garden. From farther out on the island came the Cheadles and O.R.P. Schraders and Stonewall Jackson Abrams of Georgia and the Fishguards and the Ripley Snells. Snell was there 3 days before he went to the penitentiary, so drunk on the gravel drive that Mrs. Ulysses Sweat's automobile ran over his right hand. The Danceys came too, and S.B. Whitebait, who was well over 60, and Morris A. Flink, and the Hammerheads, and Beluga, the tobacco importer, and Beluga's girls. Quite a list of partygoers. From West Egg came the Poles, and the Mulreadys, and Cecil Roebuck, and Cecil Schoen, and Gulick, and the state senator, and Newton Orchid, and who controlled films par excellence, and Eckhost, and Clyde Cohen, and Don C. Schwartzy, the son, and Arthur McCarty, all connected with the movies in one way or another. And the Catlips, and the Bembergs, and G. Earl Muldoon, brother to that Muldoon who afterwards strangled his wife. De Fontano, the promoter, came there, and Ed Legros, and James B. Rutgott Ferret, and the De Jongs, and Ernest Lilly. The De Jongs and Ernest Lilly. They came to gamble, and whenever, and when Ferret wandered into the garden, it meant he was cleaned out, and Associated Traction would have to fluctuate profitably the next day. A man named Klipspringer. He's a great character. My bad. Remember Klipspringer? He's going to be with us to chapter 10, so just know he exists. A man named Klipspringer was there so often and so long that he became known as the Boarder. He moved into Gatsby's house. I doubt if he had any other home. Of theatrical people, there were Gus Ways and Oresta O'Donovan and Lester Meyer and George Duckweed and Francis Bull. Also from New York were the Chromes and the Back Hysons and Denekers and Russell Beatty and the Corrigans and the Kellerhers and the Dewars and the Scullies and S.W. Belcher and the Smirks and the Young Quins, divorced now, and Henry L. Palmetto, who killed himself by jumping in front of a subway train in Times Square. We're not done. Benny McClenahan arrived always with 4 girls. They were never quite the same ones in physical person, but they were so identical one with another that it inevitably seemed they had been there before. I have forgotten their names. Jacqueline, I think, or else Consuela, or Gloria, or Judy, or June. And their last names were either the melodious names of flowers and months or the sterner ones of the great American capitalists whose cousins, if pressed, they would confess themselves to be. In addition, I'll get better at scrolling. In addition to all these, I could remember that Faustina O'Brien came there at least once, and the Baedeker girls, and young Brewer, who had his nose shot off in the war, and Mr. Albruxberger, and Miss Haig, his fiancée, and Ardita Fitzpeters, and Mr. P. Jewett, once head of the American Legion, and Miss Claudia Hip, with a man reputed to be her chauffeur, and a prince of something, whom we called Duke, and his name, if I've ever knew it, I have forgotten. Almost all, if not all of those people are real people from that part of America at that time. Many of them extremely wealthy businessmen and women. All these people came to Gatsby's house in the summer. At 9 o'clock one morning late in July, Gatsby's gorgeous car lurched up the rocky drive to my door and gave out a burst of melody from its three-noted horn. It was the first time he had called on me, though I had gone to two of his parties, mounted in his hydroplane, and at his urgent invitation, made frequent use of his beach. Good morning, old sport. You're having lunch with me today, and I thought we'd ride up together. He was balancing himself on the dashboard of his car with that resourcefulness of movement that is so peculiarly American, that comes, I suppose, with the absence of lifting work or rigid sitting in youth, and even more with the formless grace of our nervous, sporadic games. This quality was continually breaking through his punctilious manner in the shape of restlessness. He was never quite still. There was always a tapping foot somewhere or the impatient opening and closing of the hand. Why are you nervous, Mr. Gatsby? What is on your mind? What is weighing on your soul? He saw me looking with admiration at his car. It's pretty, isn't it, old sport? He jumped off to give me a better view. Haven't you ever seen it before? I'd seen it. Everybody had seen it. It was a rich cream color, bright with nickel, swollen here and there in its monstrous length, with triumphant hat boxes and supper boxes and tool boxes, and terraced with a labyrinth of windshields that mirrored a dozen suns, sitting down behind many layers of glass in a sort of green leather conservatory. We started to town. I'm just going to have a sip of coffee. I had talked with him perhaps half a dozen times in the past month and found, to my disappointment, that he had little to say. So my first impression, that he was a person of some undefined consequence, had gradually faded, and he had become simply the proprietor of an elaborate roadhouse next door. And then came that disconcerting ride. We hadn't reached West Egg Village before Gatsby began leaving his elegant sentences unfinished and slapping himself indecisively on the knee of his caramel-colored suit. Look here, old sport, he broke out surprisingly. What's your opinion of me, anyhow? A little overwhelmed, I began the generalized evasions which that question deserves. Well, I'm going to tell you something about my life, he interrupted. I don't want you to get a wrong idea of me from all those stories you hear. So he was aware of the bizarre accusations that flavored conversations in his halls. I'll tell you God's truth. His right hand suddenly ordered divine retribution to stand by. I am the son of some wealthy people in the Middle West, all dead now. I was brought up in America, but educated at Oxford because all my ancestors have been educated there for many years. It is a family tradition. He looked at me sideways, and I knew why Jordan Baker had believed he was lying. He hurried the phrases educated at Oxford, or swallowed it or choked on it as though it had bothered him before. And with this doubt, his whole statement fell to pieces, and I wondered if there wasn't something a little sinister about him after all. What part of the Middle West? I inquired casually. San Francisco. I see. My family all died, and I came into a good deal of money. His voice was solemn, as if the memory of that sudden extinction of a clan still haunted him. For a moment, I suspected that he was pulling my leg, but a glance at him convinced me otherwise. After that, I lived like a young Raja in all the capitals of Europe, Paris, Venice, Rome, collecting jewels, chiefly rubies, hunting big game, painting a little, things for myself only, and trying to forget something very sad that had happened to me long ago. Trying to forget something very sad that happened to me long ago. Aren't we all trying to forget something very sad that happened to us long ago? With an effort, I managed to restrain my incredulous laughter. The very phrases were worn so threadbare that they evoked no image except of a turbaned character, leaking sawdust at every pore as he pursued a tiger through Bois de Boulogne. Then came the war, old sport. Anytime you hear old sport, it's Gatsby talking. It was a great relief, and I tried very hard to die. But I seemed to bear an enchanted life. I accepted a commission as first lieutenant when it began. In the Argonne Forest, I took 2 machine gun detachments so far forward that there was a half-mile gap on either side of us where the infantry couldn't advance. We stayed there 2 days and 2 nights, 130 men with 16 Lewis guns. And when the infantry came up at last, they found the insignia of 3 German divisions among the piles of dead. I was promoted to be a major, and every Allied government gave me a decoration, even Montenegro, little Montenegro down on the Adriatic Sea. Gatsby's claiming to be a war hero. Gatsby's claiming to be a war hero. Little Montenegro. He lifted up the words and nodded at them with his smile. The smile comprehended Montenegro's troubled history and sympathized with the brave struggles of the Montenegrin people. It appreciated fully the chain of national circumstances which had elicited this tribute from Montenegro's warm little heart. My incredulity was submerged in fascination now. It was like skimming hastily through a dozen magazines. He reached in his pocket, and a piece of metal slung on a ribbon fell in my palm. That's the one from Montenegro. To my astonishment, the thing had an authentic look. It's a war medal. Ordiri di Danilo ran the circular legend. Montenegro, Nicholas Rex. Okay, so by the order of Danilo, in the country of Montenegro, King Nicholas presents you this award. Thank you, Father Bell, for teaching us Latin. Turn it. Major J. Gatsby, I read, for valor extraordinary. There's another thing I always carry, a souvenir of Oxford days. It was taken in Trinity Quad. The man on my left is now the Earl of Dorchester. It was a photograph of half a dozen young men in blazers loafing in an archway through which were visible a host of spires. There was Gatsby, looking a little, not much younger, with a cricket bat in his hand. Then it was all true. I saw the skins of tigers flaming in his palace on the Grand Canal. I saw him opening a chest of rubies to ease with their crimson lighted depths the gnawings of his broken heart. I'm going to make a big request of you today, he said, pocketing his silver souvenirs with satisfaction. So I thought you ought to know something about me. I didn't want you to think I was just some nobody. You see, I usually find myself among strangers because I drift here and there, trying to forget the sad things that happened to me. He hesitated. You'll hear about it this afternoon. At lunch? No, this afternoon. I happen to find out that you're taking Miss Baker to tea. Do you mean you're in love with Miss Baker? Nick misunderstands. He thinks Gatsby wants the girl that he's kind of casually dating, but not really dating. No, old sport, I'm not. But Miss Baker has kindly consented to speak to you about this matter. I hadn't the faintest idea what this matter was, but I was more annoyed than interested. I hadn't asked Jordan to tea in order to discuss Mr. J. Gatsby. I was sure the request would be something utterly fantastic, and for a moment I was sorry I'd ever set foot upon his overpopulated lawn. He wouldn't say another word. His correctness grew on him as we neared the city. We passed Port Roosevelt, where there was a glimpse of red-belted ocean-going ships, and sped along a cobbled slum lined with the dark, undeserted saloons of the faded gilt 1900s. Then the Valley of Ashes opened out on both sides of us, and I had a glimpse of Mrs. Wilson straining at the garage pump with painting vitality as we went by. Remember Mrs. Wilson? She's the one who's having the affair with Tom Buchanan. Remember the Valley of Ashes? It's the garbage dump outside of the wealthiest village in New York City. With fenders spread like wings, we scattered light through half Astoria, only half, for as we twisted among the pillars of the elevated, I heard the familiar jug, jug, spat of a motorcycle, and a frantic policeman rode alongside. All right, old sport, called Gatsby. We slowed down. Taking a white card from his wallet, he waved it before the man's eyes. Gatsby's getting pulled over by a motorcycle police officer. Right you are, agreed the policeman, tipping his cap. Know you next time, Mr. Gatsby. Excuse me. Gatsby pulled out a business card or something that basically said, I'm Gatsby. No ticket for Gatsby. What was that, I inquired. The picture of Oxford. I was able, that's right, I forgot about that. I was able to do the commissioner a favor once, and he sends me a Christmas card every year. So Gatsby's got high-level friends. Over the great bridge, with the sunlight through the girders making a constant flicker upon the moving cars, with the city rising up across the river in white heaps and sugar lumps, all built with a wish out of non-olfactory money, the city scene from the Queensboro Bridge is always the city scene for the first time, in its first wild promise of all the mystery and the beauty of the world. A dead man passed us in a hearse heaped with blooms, followed by 2 carriages with drawn blinds, and by more cheerful carriages for friends. The friends looked out as us with tragic eyes and short upper lips of southeastern Europe, and I was glad that the sight of Gatsby's splendid car was included in their somber holiday. As we crossed Blackwell's Island, a limousine passed us, driven by a white chauffeur, in which sat 3 modish, the word that was used at that time to describe African Americans during Jim Crow, 2 bucks and a girl. I laughed aloud as the yolks of their eyeballs rolled toward us in haughty rivalry. Anything can happen now that we slid over this bridge, I thought. Anything at all. Even Gatsby could happen without any particular wonder. Roaring noon and a well-fanned 42nd Street celebration. I met Gatsby for lunch. Blinking away the brightness of the street outside, my eyes picked him out obscurely in the anteroom, talking to another man. Mr. Carraway, this is my friend, Mr. Wolfsheim. A small, flat-nosed Jew raised his large head and regarded me with 2 fine growths of hair, with luxuriated in either nostril. After a moment, I discovered his tiny eyes in the half-darkness. So I took one look at him, said Mr. Wolfsheim, shaking my hand earnestly, and what do you think I did? What? I inquired politely, but evidently he was not addressing me, for he dropped my hand and covered Gatsby with his expressive nose. I handed the money to Catspaw, and I said, all right, Catspaw, don't pay him a penny till he shuts his mouth. He shut it then and there. Gatsby took an arm of each of us and moved forward into the restaurant, whereupon Mr. Wolfsheim swallowed a new sentence. He was starting and lapsed into a somnambulatory abstraction. Highballs? That's whiskey with soda water. Don't you drink those, you get an upset stomach. Highballs? Asked the head waiter. This is a nice restaurant here, said Mr. Wolfsheim, looking at the Presbyterian nymphs on the ceiling. But I like across the street better. Yes, highballs, agreed Gatsby, and then to Mr. Wolfsheim. It's too hot over there. Hot and small, yes, said Mr. Wolfsheim, but full of memories. What place is that, I asked. The Old Metropole. It's a hotel, restaurant, bar in New York City. The Old Metropole, brooded Mr. Wolfsheim gloomily, filled with faces dead and gone, filled with friends gone now forever. I can't forget so long as I lived the night they shot Rosie Rosenthal there. It was 6 of us at the table, and Rosie had eat and drunk a lot all evening. When it was almost morning, the waiter came up to him with a funny look and says somebody wants to speak to him outside. All right, says Rosie, and begins to get up, and I pulled him down in his chair. Let the bastards come in here if they want you, Rosie, but don't you, so help me, move outside this room. It was 4 o'clock in the morning then, and we'd raised the blinds. We'd have seen daylight. Did he go? I asked innocently. Sure he went. Mr. Wolfsheim's nose flashed at me indignantly. He turned around in the door and says, don't let that waiter take away my coffee. Then he went out on the sidewalk and they shot him 3 times in his full belly and drove away. 4 of them were electrocuted, I said, remembering. 5 with Becker. His nostrils turned to me in an interested way. I understand you're looking for a business conjugation. That's an accent. That's a German Jewish accent. My bad. I understand you're looking for a business connection. That would be connection, a business hookup. Oh, no, he exclaimed. This isn't the man. So Gatsby and Wolfsheim are having this secret discussion in front of Nick. But then they're talking about some guy that got killed across the street for stepping out. Please tell me you understand that in 1922, somewhere between New York and Chicago, there were a lot of gangsters, bootleggers. Oh, no, Mr. Wolfsheim seemed disappointed. This is just a friend. I told you we talk about that, seeing how Gatsby's being coy. I told you we talk about that some other time. Stop talking, Wolfsheim, wrong guy. I beg your pardon, said Mr. Wolfsheim. I had a wrong man. Forget everything I said, especially about that murder. A succulent hash arrived, and Mr. Wolfsheim, forgetting the more sentimental atmosphere of the old metropole, began to eat with ferocious delicacy. His eyes, meanwhile, roved very slowly all around the room. He completed the arc by turning in to inspect the people directly behind him. I think that except for my presence, he would have taken one short glance beneath our own table. Look here, old sport, said Gatsby, leaning toward me. I'm afraid I made you a little angry this morning in the car. There was the smile again, but this time I held out against it. I don't like mysteries, I answered, and I don't understand why you won't come out frankly and tell me what you want. Why has it all got to come through Miss Baker? Oh, it's nothing underhand, he assured me. Miss Baker's a great sportswoman, and she'd never do anything that wasn't all right. Well, except she cheated at golf. Suddenly, he looked at his watch, jumped up and hurried from the room, leaving me with Mr. Wolfsheim at the table. He has to telephone, said Mr. Wolfsheim, following with his eyes. Fine fellow, isn't he? Handsome to look at and a perfect gentleman. Yes, he's an Oxford man. As in Oxford, England? Oh! He went to Oxford College in England. You know, Oxford College. I've heard of it. It's one of the most famous colleges in the world. Have you known Gatsby for a long time, I inquired. This is Nick talking. Now here's the response. Several years, he answered in a gratified way. I made the pleasure of his acquaintance just after the war. But I knew I had discovered a man of fine breeding after I talked with him an hour. I said to myself, there's the kind of man you'd like to take home and introduce to your mother and sister. He paused. I see you're looking at my cuff buttons. I hadn't been looking at them, but I did now. They were composed of oddly familiar pieces of ivory. Fine specimens of human molars, he informed me. Well, I inspected them. That's a very interesting idea. Mr. Wolfsheim's cufflinks are made of human teeth. Fine well, I inspected them. Yeah, he flipped his sleeves up under his coat. Yeah, Gatsby's very careful about women. He would never so much as look at a friend's wife. When the subject of this instinctive trust returned to the table and sat down, Mr. Wolfsheim drank his coffee with a jerk and got to his feet. I have enjoyed my lunch today, he said, and I'm going to run off from you two young men before I outstay my welcome. Don't hurry, Meyer, said Gatsby without enthusiasm. Mr. Wolfsheim raised his hand in a sort of benediction. You're very polite, but I belong to another generation, he announced solemnly. You sit here and discuss your sports and your young ladies and your. He supplied an imaginary noun with another wave of his hand. As for me, I am 50 years old and I won't impose myself on any longer. As he shook hands and turned away, his tragic nose was trembling. I wondered if I had said something to offend him. He became very sentimental sometimes, explained Gatsby. This is one of the sentimental days. He's quite a character around New York, a denizen of Broadway. Who is he, anyhow? An actor? No. A dentist. Meyer Wolfsheim? No. He's a gambler. Gatsby hesitated, then added coolly, he's the man who fixed the World Series back in 1919. Okay, White Sox fans. This Cubs fan is going to note that in 1919, the Chicago White Sox, known as the Chicago Black Sox, tried to rig the World Series. Shoeless Joe Jackson. Say it ain't so, Joe. The man who actually fixed the World Series was named Arnold Rothstein. If you want a history lesson. Arnold Rothstein was a gangster from New York who was also a Jewish gangster. There were big Jewish mobs, just like there were big Italian mobs, Meyer Lansky, etc. And Arnold Rothstein approached several of the White Sox players and convinced them to cheat, to purposefully lose, and so he could make money on gambling. So that is a real history. F. Scott Fitzgerald fictionalizes the account and changes Rothstein to Wolfsheim. So knowing that most of you are Sox fans, good work. Your team cheated. This Cubs fan, his team never cheated. Fix the World Series, I repeated. The idea staggered me. I remembered, of course, that the World Series had been fixed in 1919. But if I had thought of it at all, I would have thought of it as a thing that merely happened. The end of some inevitable chain. It never occurred to me that one man could start to play with the faith of 50 million people, with the single-mindedness of a burglar blowing a safe. How did he happen to do that? I asked after a minute. He just saw the opportunity. Why isn't he in jail? They can't get him, old sport. He's a smart man. I insisted on paying the check. As the waiter bought my change, I caught sight of Tom Buchanan across the crowded room. Come along with me for a minute, I said. I've got to say hello to someone. When we saw us, Tom jumped up and took half a dozen steps in our direction. That's Daisy's husband, Tom Buchanan, the man who punched Myrtle Wilson with his open hand, broke her nose. Where have you been? He demanded eagerly. Daisy's furious because you haven't called up. This is Mr. Gatsby, Mr. Buchanan. They shook hands briefly, and a strained, unfamiliar look of embarrassment came over Gatsby's face. I don't think Gatsby and Tom like each other. How you been anyhow? Demanded Tom of me. How'd you happen to come up this far to eat? I've been having lunch with Mr. Gatsby. I turned toward Mr. Gatsby, but he was no longer there. One October day in 1917, said Jordan Baker that afternoon, sitting up very straight on a straight chair in the tea garden at the Plaza Hotel. I was walking along from one place to another, half on the sidewalks and half on the lawns. I was happier on the lawns because I had on shoes from England with rubber knobs on the soles that bit into the soft ground. I had on a new plaid skirt, also that blew a little in the wind, and whenever this happened, the red, white, and blue banners in front of all the houses stretched out stiff and said, tut, 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 in a disapproving way. The largest of the banners and the largest of the lawns belonged to Daisy Fay's house. That's Daisy. Daisy Fay married Tom Buchanan. She was just 18. They're going back as a flashback to Daisy as a young 18-year-old. She was just 18, 2 years older than me, and by far the most popular of all the young girls in Louisville. I got to go back here a little bit. Oh, my God. Why did I do that? Okay, hold on. Stop. We're almost done. You can see chapter 5 is right around the corner. Give me a second. I need to confirm something. Give me a sec. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Okay, so Jordan Baker recognizes Jay Gatsby from 4 years ago. And then she tells this story of Daisy when Daisy was 18. All right. So this is Jordan Baker talking. That was 1917. Let me make sure I read this. Nope, I got to start here. I'm sorry, I got confused for a minute. I was just reading too fast. Okay, here. Let's start here. I don't think there's much more of today's reading. 20 minutes. The largest of the banners and the largest of the longs belonged to Daisy Faye's house. She was just 18. This is the backstory of Daisy, so it's really important. 2 years older than me, that's Jordan, and by far the most popular of all the young girls in Louisville. Daisy's from Louisville, Kentucky. She dressed in white and had a little white roadster, and all day long the telephone rang in her house, and excited young officers, she's very pretty, from Camp Taylor demanded the privilege of monopolizing her that night. Anyways, for an hour, they all want to date Daisy. When I came opposite her house that morning, her white roadster, that's her car, was beside the curb, and she was sitting in it with a lieutenant I had never seen before. They were so engrossed in each other that they didn't see me until I was 5 feet away. "Hello, Jordan," she called unexpectedly. "Please come here." I was flattered that she wanted to speak to me because of all the older girls, I admired her the most. She asked me if I was going to the Red Cross and make bandages. I was. Well, then, would I tell them that she couldn't come that day? Daisy worked for the Red Cross. It is World War I. The officer looked at Daisy while she was speaking in a way that every young girl wants to be looked at sometime, and because it seemed romantic to me. I have remembered the incident ever since. His name was Jay Gatsby, and I didn't lay eyes on him again for over 4 years. Even after I'd met him on Long Island, I didn't realize it was the same man. That was 1917. The novel takes place currently 1922. Oh, Mr. Edwards, I get it. Gatsby was in the Army. He was a lieutenant. He came back from his tour of duty. He returned to Fort Taylor in Louisville. Daisy was working at the Red Cross to take care of men who'd come back from war wounded to bandage their wounds. They fell in love. She was 18. Gatsby's age is yet to be revealed. I get it, Mr. Edwards. They might still be in love. Oh, she's married to Tom Buchanan. Oh, he cheats on her. Oh, the mystery thickens. By the next year, I had a few beaux myself, and I began to play in tournaments, so I didn't see... Beau is the old French word for boyfriend. He's my beau. So I didn't see Daisy very often. She went with a slightly older crowd. When she went with anyone at all, wild rumors were circulating about her, how her mother had found her packing her bag one winter night to go to New York and say goodbye to a soldier. I wonder if that's Gatsby, who was going overseas. Wonder if that's Gatsby. She was effectively prevented, but she wasn't on speaking terms with her family for several weeks. After she didn't play around with the soldiers anymore, but only with a few flat-footed, short-sighted young men in town who couldn't get into the Army at all. Yeah, I said Gatsby was coming from the war. I misspoke. Gatsby was going to war. So he kisses Daisy one last time at Fort Taylor in Louisville. She stays behind as a Red Cross nurse. He goes into the Argonne Force and machine guns down all those Germans. To two never see each other again until they move in next door to one another by accident. By the next autumn, oh, Bobco, Mr. Edwards, I will not speak in my robot voice. By the next autumn, she was gay again, gay as ever. Gay means happy in this context. She had a debut after the armistice. Armistice is the end of the war, World War I. And in February, was presumably engaged to a man from New Orleans. In June, she married Tom Buchanan of Chicago, shout out to Chicago, with more pomp and circumstance than Louisville ever knew before. He came down with 100 people in 4 private cars and hired a whole floor of the Seelbach Hotel. And the day before the wedding, he gave her a string of pearls valued at $350,000. True story, I stayed at the Seelbach Hotel once, paid for by Chicago Public Schools, when I was a first-year teacher at PMA. A group of teachers went down to Fort Knox for some mock basic training to get us into the mentality of teaching at a ROTC military academy. And I had my own private room at the Seelbach Hotel. It's a beautiful, historic hotel in downtown Louisville. It was a great time. I was in my 30s then. It was so long ago. I was bridesmaid. I came into her room half an hour before the bridal dinner and found her lying on her bed as lovely as the June night in her flowered dress and as drunk as a monkey. She had a bottle of Saturday in one hand and a letter in the other. "Gratulate me," she muttered. "Never had a drink before, but oh, how I do enjoy it." "What's the matter, Daisy?" "I was scared, I can't tell you. I never seen a girl like that before. Here, dearest." She groped around in a waste paper basket which had with her on the bed and pulled out the string of pearls. "Take them downstairs and give them back to whoever they belong to. Tell them all Daisy's changed her mind. Says Daisy's changed her mind." She doesn't want to marry Tom. She's marrying the wrong man. I told you 100 times, don't you dare marry the wrong person. You marry someone when your heart goes pit-a-pat, 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 pit-a-pat. She began to cry. She cried and cried. I rushed out and found her mother's maid, and we locked the door and got her into a cold bath. She wouldn't let go of the letter. She took it into the tub. That must be the letter from Gatsby, right? The goodbye letter. With her and squeezed it up into a wet ball and only let me leave it in the soap dish when she saw that it was coming to pieces like snow. But she didn't say another word. We gave her spirits of ammonia and put ice on her forehead and hooked her back into her dress. And half an hour later, when we walked out of the room, the pearls were around her neck and the incident was over. Next day at 5 o'clock, she married Tom Buchanan without so much as a shiver and started off on a 3-month trip to the South Seas. She married a man whom she did not love. I saw them in Santa Barbara when they came back, and I thought I'd never seen a girl so mad about her husband. If he left the room for a minute, she'd look around uneasily and say, "Where's Tom gone?" and wear the most abstracted expression until she saw him coming in the door. She used to sit on the sand with his head in her lap by the hour, rubbing her fingers over his eyes and looking at him with unfathomable delight. It was touching to see them together. It made you laugh in a hushed, fascinated way. That was in August. A week after I left Santa Barbara, Tom ran into a wagon on the Ventura Road one night and ripped the front wheel off his car. The girl who was with him they get in a lot of car accidents in Gatsby. The girl who was with him got into the papers too because her arm was broken. She was one of the chambermaids in the Santa Barbara Hotel. I'm guessing he's already having affairs. He's married a month and he's already having affairs. The next April, Daisy had her little girl, and they went to France for a year. I saw them one spring in Cannes, and later in Deauville, and then they came back to Chicago, shout out to Chicago, to settle down. Daisy was popular in Chicago, as you know. They moved with a fast crowd, all of them young and rich and wild. But she came out with an absolutely perfect reputation. Perhaps because she doesn't drink. It's a great advantage not to drink among hard-drinking people. You can hold your tongue, and moreover, you can time any little irregularity of your own so that everybody else is so blind that they don't see or care. Perhaps Daisy never went in for amour at all, and yet there's something in that voice of hers. Well, about 6 weeks ago, she heard the name Gatsby for the first time in years. Now back to present day. It was when I asked you, do you remember if you knew Gatsby in West Egg? After you had gone home, she came into my room and woke me up and said, "What Gatsby?" And when I described him, I was half asleep. She said in the strangest voice that it must be the man she used to know. It wasn't until then that I connected this Gatsby with the officer in her white car. They were in love. She was 18. When Jordan Baker had finished telling all this, we had left the plaza for half an hour and were driving in Victoria through Central Park. The sun had gone down behind the tall apartments of the movie stars in the West 50s, and the clear voices of girls, already gathered like crickets on the grass, rose through the hot twilight. I'm the Sheik of Araby. Your love belongs to me. At night when you're asleep, into your tent I'll creep. It was a strange coincidence, I said, but it wasn't a coincidence at all. Why not? Gatsby bought that house so that Daisy would be just across the bay. Uh-oh. Plot revealed. Mystery solved. Gatsby rents that house. Somehow he found out that Daisy and Tom moved in that summer. So he bought a house nearby. Interesting. Then it had not been merely the stars to which he had aspired on that June night. He came alive to me, delivered suddenly from the womb of his purposeless splendor. He wants to know, continued Jordan, if you'll invite Daisy to your house some afternoon and then let him come over. All right, don't get confused. Gatsby knows that Daisy's married, so he can't go over to that house. Plus, you already see Tom and he hate each other. Gatsby wants Nick, who lives in that $80 a month bungalow in West Egg. Gatsby wants Nick to invite Daisy, his second cousin, over to tea, and then Gatsby mysteriously shows up and tries to rekindle that lost love. Okay, I can see this working. I can also see this blowing up. The modesty of the demand shook me. He had waited 5 years and bought a mansion where he dispensed starlight to casual moths so that he could come over some afternoon to a stranger's garden. Oh, that's genius. Gatsby spending $35,000 a month to rent a French villa in East Egg Village, Long Island, New York City, so he can have tea with his lost love. Yeah, that's a man you marry. Too bad she already married the wrong man. Did I have to know all this before he could ask such a little thing? He's afraid. He's waited so long. He thought you might be offended. You see, he's a regular tough underneath it all. Something worried me. Why didn't he ask you to arrange a meeting? He wants her to see his house, she explained, and your house is right next door. Oh, I think he half expected her to wander into one of his parties. Balloon drop. Balloon drop. See, I tried to give you guys hints for the better part of the hour. Gatsby throws these parties where thousands of people show up uninvited because he's begging in his heart that one time Daisy would show up. And she never does. The man spends $10,000 a night on champagne and lets 1,000 people literally vandalize his house just in case, just on the chance that Daisy shows up. But she doesn't. Len, I told you, when you're in a huge crowd and your eyes wander and look through that crowd, who are you looking for? He was looking for Daisy. Of course, I'm married. I look for only Mrs. Edwards. 15 years married today, June 25th. 15 years I've been married. I think he half expected her to wander into one of his parties some night, went on Jordan, but she never did. Oop, where'd I hear that before? Then he began asking people casually if they knew her, and I was the first one he found. It was the night that night he set for me at his dance, and you should have heard the elaborate way he worked up to it. Of course, I immediately suggested a luncheon in New York, and I thought he'd gone mad. I don't want to do anything out of the way, he kept saying. I want to see her right next door. Literally, the girl next door. When I said you were a particular friend of Tom's, he started to abandon the whole idea. You know, she is married. He doesn't know very much about Tom, though he says he's read a Chicago, shout out to Chicago paper for years, just on the chance of catching a glimpse of Daisy's name. God, does he love this woman. It was dark now. And it was dipped under and as we dipped under a little bridge, I put my arm around Jordan's golden shoulder and drew her toward me and asked her to dinner. Suddenly, I wasn't thinking of Daisy and Gatsby anymore, but of this clean, hard, limited person who dealt in universal skepticism and who leaned back jauntily just within the circle of my arm, and phrase began to beat in my ears with a sort of heady excitement. There are only the pursued, the pursuing, the busy, and the tired. And Daisy ought to have something in her life, murmured Jordan to me. Does she want to see Gatsby? Does she want to see Gatsby? She's not to know about it. Gatsby doesn't want her to know. You're just supposed to invite her to tea. Gatsby wants to surprise her. We passed a barrier of dark trees and then the facade of 59th Street. A block of delicate pale light beamed down into the park, that's Central Park. Unlike Gatsby and Tom Buchanan, I had no girl whose disembodied face floated along the dark cornices and blinding signs, and so I drew up the girl beside me, tightening my arms. Her wan, scornful mouth smiled, and so I drew her up again, closer, this time to my face. Closer, this time to my face. Looks like Nick might kiss Jordan. He's got his love interest too. And now I'm coming back to you. Chapter 5. Oh, Mr. Edwards, you sneaky summer school, working on your day off, free of charge English teacher. It's a love story. Damn right it's a love story. Gotcha. I got you again. It's a love story. Ha! Mr. Edwards 1, whole room of summer scholars 0. It's a love story. With some pretty despicable people in it. Gatsby's in love with Daisy. I'll do a quick recap. There will be class next Tuesday, July 7th. My bad. What did I say that? I'm a week ahead. That's when I start my summer school with the sophomores. June 30th. June 29th is Monday. June 30th is Tuesday. We'll do chapter 5. So okay, I get it, Mr. Edwards. The whole point of chapter 4 is to find out Daisy's history as an 18-year-old nurse, Gatsby as a lieutenant in the Army. They meet in Fort Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky. He's got to go to the Argonne Forest in France to fight the Germans. She is bandaging the wounds of men who come back from their tour. They have a torrid affair. They're seen kissing in her white roadster. She's so beautiful that all the men want her attention for an hour. But Gatsby's the one she loves. And he writes her a farewell note because he's going to war, to war, to war. He's going off to war. Never to know if he'll come back. And he writes her a love letter. Goodbye, my love. And she reads it and gets so frustrated. And she reads it in the bathtub and she crumples it up with the soap and it dissolves. And she gives up her dreams of Gatsby. and she settles to marry a rich man named Tom, who is abusive but wealthy. And he cheats on her, literally, within a month of them being married. Plus this long-term cheat with Myrtle Wilson, the one who he open hand hits and breaks her nose. It's a love story / tragedy at this point. Gatsby's love is his heart's broken, going on 4 years. She married the wrong man. One thing I'd say for sure, if you were writing a paper for college, you could say, professor, you could say through textual evidence that it's clear that Gatsby loves Daisy. He searches for her name in newspapers. He invites parties where 1,000 people show up in the hopes that she'll show up so we can see her. But then Jordan says, does Daisy want to see him? That's not been answered yet. That's chapter 5. So chapter 5 is going to be the secret meeting between Daisy and Gatsby at Nick Carraway's bungalow. And you know from today's reading that Gatsby is insistent that he doesn't want Daisy to know he's coming. So she's going to come to tea because her cousin invites her, Nick. And now we have to speculate, when Gatsby walks into that room, that tea room, is she going to be A, my lost love, or B, I don't want to see you anymore, I've moved on, or anything in between? That's what we don't know. We don't know if the love is mutual, reciprocal, requited, and therefore perhaps this love story / tragedy has 2 possible endings. It's either going to end as a love story and the right people finally hook up, or it's going to end as a tragedy and the right people marry the wrong people for the wrong reasons, and life goes on in great dread and boredom and mundaneness. Because there are the pursued, the pursuing, the tired, and the bored. 15 years I'm married to Mrs. Penelope Edwards. Today, June 25th. You marry the right woman or man, I don't care how you marry. Thank you, Evelyn. But you listen to me, and I don't want to get too much into your personal lives because you need to make your own choices. Like I said, I could tell you 1,000 times, don't do it, and then you do it. Because you have to learn for yourself. But I'm telling you, if anything, knowing that we're not taking tests on Gatsby, we're not taking multiple choice, I'm not asking you to write an essay. Oh, that might be nice too. If anything, Gatsby is a how-to guide on why and when to marry and how and why you should or should not marry, because marrying the wrong person will affect you permanently. I always speak very candidly to you, and I say things that most teachers don't, but always appropriate. I'm not trying to manipulate, but I will say, in my family, I am the only member of my family that's not divorced. My parents separated in 1979. They were Catholic. They never divorced because they didn't believe in it, but they lived apart. My parents lived apart for about 30 years until my father got sick, and then they went back together in retirement. My mother took care of him, but they lived in separate houses. The Edwards have 2 family homes, one in Northbrook which is the North Shore, where Tom Buchanan's from, and one in Avondale, about a mile and a half that way in Avondale, Chicago. When my father left my mother, he left her the family home to raise us children in the suburbs, ergo Father Schuler in Loyola Academy in Wilmette. But he lived in Avondale in a beautiful home. My brother now owns it. My brother inherited it. It's a beautiful home. It was built in 1897. It's just this beautiful old home, Chicago home. My brother still lives there. And we would go to school Monday through Friday, and I would live at home and mostly see my mother. There were times I didn't see my father for months. And then maybe on the weekend, my dad would take me to a ball game. And then a lot of times, you know how it is. A lot of times you want to be with your dad. A lot of times you want to be with your mom. It's like, can I stay with my dad? I'm not even joking you. I'll tell you something even more bizarre. When I was in like 7th and 8th grade, my parents' relationship got so torturous and so irreconcilable that I lived with my Uncle Charlie in Morton Grove for an entire summer. I lived with my cousin Mike. I didn't live with either of my parents. 7th or 8th grade. I want to say 7th. I was a, kid. I was definitely in grade school. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. He had a pool table in the basement and a big backyard, and the kids from Skokie were tough, and we used to wander through the whatever. I actually for a while lived with neither of my parents. My brother moved out of the house when he was 17 years old. My oldest brother moved out of the house permanently, got a job when he was 17. You all have the similar stories. It's very hard. I'm going to say this lovingly. It's very hard to interfere with your parents' relationships, especially if it's rocky, and not truly loving. But you will ultimately forgive all that. You will forgive, no matter unless we're talking extreme cases of abuse. You will forgive. I saw my mom on Sunday with her new boyfriend, her 84-year-old boyfriend. My father passed away, as you know, many years ago. My mom has a new boyfriend, Ray. She lives with Ray in a beautiful, huge estate. She said to me, son, this was Sunday. Today's Thursday. She said, she always said, was I a good mother? Did I raise you right? And I said, yes, you did. Stop beating yourself up. You did a great job. Are you sure? I tried. I sent you to Catholic schools, and I tried to give you Catholic. I gave you a Catholic education. And she did. Okay, that's enough about that. I hope you find my words reassuring. Certainly, they're brutally honest. But remember, the end of the day, you will forgive those that came before you that made mistakes in front of you, where you were a mute witness to somebody else's problems. You will forgive that as you get older and sentimental. Okay? Hey, smile. There's still hope. Listen, I'm going to let you go. It's actually quite late. There is still hope. As we go into chapter 5, the halfway point of the novel, that Gatsby and Daisy rekindle their love. There's hope. So we got that to build upon. Chapter 5 is the tea party at Daisy's. And Gatsby's going to surprise her. See how she reacts. All right, I care for you all. Have a safe weekend. The next time you see me on Tuesday, I will be at another location. I will be at my house in Michigan. So you'll see a different backdrop, and I'll show you the lake and maybe some cool stuff from another part of my life appropriately. All right, so keep searching for those lost loves. You still got some hope. And have a nice weekend. Okay, that's it.
You too.
Don't forget to come back Tuesday. Bye. It's just getting good. Tuesday, chapter 5. Everybody be good. All right, bye.